Good morning, parents. I'd just like to give you a quick update on the start of 2022. It's been a fantastic first week. It was wonderful to see all the new families, the new students, new staff join us last week. It's a really peaceful time. We had over 124 new students on campus, including the kindy intake. So it was wonderful to see our students embrace them, support them. Our leaders were showing them to their classrooms, and staff, of course, were welcoming them. And the reports came back to me at the end of the week that everyone had a really good week, settled week, despite the hot weather. And so I trust you've enjoyed that week, and particularly over the weekend where we've had a little bit of a cool change. It's also been a week of challenges. As you know, we've had a number of outbreaks in Western Australia with COVID-19 cases that have impacted schools. For principals and leadership teams, it was sort of our scenario that we were hoping wouldn't happen for a while, but the reality is in the first week over 6 schools have been significantly impacted by either a case or a number of cases in their college that's really caused the whole college community to go into 14 days isolation. So I have been sending out updates to you that I'll do each time I receive them from ASWA. Or if we're getting updates from the government that filter down to us, so just to keep you informed. But also today I wanted to give you a bit more insight into what we as a leadership team are doing in response to these guidelines. As an independent school, we can, I suppose, move ahead of the game a little bit if we feel we need to provide a little bit more information to families. And so we've been responding to that. The executive team have been meeting, and so I just want to encourage you that we are taking each day as it comes. We're keeping updated with whatever developments are happening and trying to look ahead and plan ahead. So I just want to give you a few guidelines. We received over the weekend some new updates that the Chief Health Officer has said there's now a limit for in-school gatherings, and they would like there to be groups, either class groups or small group activities, and we could seek alternatives if possible where we don't meet as a whole school. And really the simple rationale behind that, and I think this was evident last week with our whole college assembly, we only need one positive case in our college community to be in attendance at that whole college event, and we all, including you as families, need to isolate for 14 days. So it's because of that risk. Of course, there's a virus that we're wanting to guard against, but also the consequences of a positive case for the whole community is very significant. So we need to mitigate that where we possibly can. So the guidelines have given us guidelines about isolation, quarantining for those close contacts. They give us some scenarios if a teacher is a close contact or a student is a close contact. And then they encourage schools to look at how do we plan for the continuity and the consistency moving forward. And so our executive team have spent quite a bit of time on what we call our stage 1 low case environment plan of action. And so I'll share some of this with you in writing, but I thought I'd like to share just a little bit of an overview with you now. And so in it we talk about how we need to minimise our face-to-face meetings for our staff. All our staff meetings will be held online. Any professional development that staff participate in at the moment will be online. Our assemblies and our worships will be pre-recorded and uploaded for home classes to be involved in online. Our parent nights, unfortunately, will now be held online, and you'll hear from the heads of school about the primary school. That's a little bit different to the secondary school. And any other large gathering as a whole college community has been rescheduled until further notice. And so there are other scenarios we've looked at, like, for example, if a student is diagnosed with COVID-19 or is a close contact, we've got a number of steps that need to be followed. First of all, they need to, if they're unwell, be sent immediately to student services, where we will isolate them. We'll contact parents. We do have some RAT tests if needed for staff, and that child needs to go be in isolation until they are tested positive. They'll be masked as well. We then offer support to that family through our chaplains. We look at the class teacher, the other close contacts. We'll communicate to you from an educational perspective according to the age group, whether it's early childhood or senior school, and so we've got all those scenarios that we've looked at. The second group, of course, is if a staff member tests positive. how do we respond to that? And of course we've got a number of steps there that we need to follow. If the staff member is actually unwell themselves, or if they're a close contact, how do we proceed from there? What contact can we have with them regarding programs or offering remote learning? We then look at what if a whole class is impacted by a positive report, where they may have to go into isolation, like is the case in some other schools. And so what sort of support do we provide to that class regarding the teaching, online, remote learning, etc. And so we've got examples of the platforms we'll use there. If our whole college, or even a section of the college, could be middle school or senior school or early childhood, was directed by the Chief Health Officer to go into isolation, how would we proceed there? We've looked at the possible steps there. We then go into our executive team. What would happen if our whole executive team were, for whatever reason, close contacts or tested positive? Who would lead the primary school, who would lead the secondary school, etc. We've gone through those scenarios. Or any of our college leaders, if one of our heads of department were having to go into isolation, how would we respond to that? So we've got a whole lot of stage 1 guidelines that we've talked with our staff about, and we'll communicate some of those to you. Now stage 2, the government has talked about in the case of very high caseload environment. At this stage, I think we will just hold off on any of our thoughts about that, because really the government's still not sure, and I don't want to confuse the situation by giving stage 1 and stage 2 information to you. Just the last thing I'd like to encourage you, that as a community, could I just encourage you to remember that our normal health and hygiene guidelines of wearing masks, social distancing where possible. If any of you, staff, students or parents, are feeling unwell, please stay home, be tested. I did hear, unfortunately, from one of our parents last week that someone was waiting for a PCR test result, but they hadn't said anything to anybody. This is outside of the community, but connected to our parents. And really those scenarios, we need to make sure if you are being tested, please be isolated. Don't be at school and wandering around waiting for a test result. Please follow the guidelines. And I say that really with the heart of protecting this community. We do have staff that are at high risk, and students as well. And so we're following these guidelines obviously to protect them, but also protect the school from going into a 14-day isolation lockdown, which possibly is the case like those other schools. So thank you so much for your understanding. We do realise it's a difficult time, it's a challenging time, and we're trying to navigate and be ahead of the game as much as we can. The staff have been working with Mr. Southwood on the Microsoft Teams platform, the Seesaw platform for the early childhood, using Sector in the upper schools, so that we're ready in the case that either a student or a teacher or a whole class or part of the school or the whole school does need to go into a period of isolation. Even if it is a shorter 3 to 5 days for a clean, we're hoping we're prepared for that as best we can. And so thank you for your understanding. Appreciate your support. Please continue to pray for us, and it's exciting that it's been a great start to the year, and we're really looking forward to a great year in 2022.